Welcome to the Medical Ancillary Sales Podcast, your number one source for making money in the medical ancillary sector. Mike and Viv bring you the latest information from lab services, pharmacy, diagnostic testing, and so much more. The latest in ancillary services will be right around the corner. Welcoming the hosts of the Medical Ancillary Sales Podcast, here's Mike and Viv. Welcome to the Medical Ancillary Sales Podcast, your number one source for making money in the medical ancillary sector. Mike and Viv bring you the latest information from lab services, pharmacy, diagnostic testing, and so much more. The latest in ancillary services will be right around the corner. Welcoming the hosts of the Medical Ancillary Sales Podcast, here's Mike and Viv.
Hello and welcome to the Medical Ancillary Sales Podcast. And this is a very special episode because Viv and I are actually, for the first time ever, recording live in person together in the same studio here in Solana Beach, California. So Viv, it's nice to have you here in person.
Yes, thanks Mike. Thanks for having me, and it's a real privilege to be here. Loving the beach. I've missed being near the beach, so it's great to have a beach on hand.
Absolutely. And Viv, I didn't prep you for this episode at all, and I actually wanted to do this without having any kind of script or anything. I talked to a lot of reps out there, and I thought this would be a good time to just kind of take an overall picture of this industry, because let's face it, this industry it looks so tempting when you look at it. You look at this industry and you think, how the hell couldn't I make $1 million a year doing this? What doctor wouldn't want that? I'm going to sell a bunch of these, but then the reality always falls short. And I know a lot of people get frustrated in this business. And that's really why we started this company and why we started this podcast. I see myself, at least, more as someone that can help navigate the minefield that is the ancillary business. Because let's face it, Viv, there's a little bit of BS out there, is there not?
Absolutely there is. There's a lot of programs out there, and they might say that they can make a bunch of money, but it takes a lot of accounts to get there, and a lot of accounts means a lot of doctors and a lot of connections. So that is, it's so much better having a menu of services to be able to offer rather than just going in with one product.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't a doom and gloom podcast. I actually wanted this to be a message of hope, because we're privy to seeing loads of sales reps out there. We've represented dozens and dozens of programs with different vendors. So we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And every one of these programs, they're all good at selling it to us, the sales reps, and selling us and how we're going to make a bunch of money by selling their service. But most services, and when I say most, probably 90% of the programs out there that they advertise that you're going to make a six-figure living just selling this program or that program, they fall so far short of the mark, it's ridiculous. However, there are some programs that work, and there are ways to make legitimate money in this business, and we don't want anyone to waste their time. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about, is trying to get you right to the source, trying to get you to the places that are going to make you a living. Because the great thing about this industry is that you get to be your own boss. You have unlimited income potential. It's dynamic. It's always changing. There's always new programs coming out. There's always ways you can complement what you're doing. You have a lot of autonomy. So there's a lot of things to love about this business. But the tough thing is just getting through that minefield of where should I be spending my energy to make money? So I'll put you on the spot a little bit, Viv. You've seen a lot of people coming in and out of the business. if you were starting today, you're fresh-faced Viv, right, brand new to the United States. What's the first thing you're doing? Where are you putting your focus? Which programs, which doctors?
Right, well, you always want to find the programs that you can get a quick conversion, and one of the programs, it's not going to make you rich overnight, but it's going to certainly give you the ability to build up some steady income and also help you to start to make connections with doctors. And that would be like our electronic health assessments. That would be one. The reason that I picked that one is because you can close a doctor on that one within a handful or less of visits, whereas other things like equipment, they can take a much longer sales cycle. So if you are fresh out there, you want to have that little bit of enthusiasm that you get when you actually get a contract in. So that is one. Definitely the lab services, I know that they typically don't make the doctor's revenue, but they certainly will make you life-changing revenue. And that is often a very much a relationship-focused sale. So if you start with the mental health or the electronic health assessments, you can start to build your relationship, and you can get the doctor some revenue coming in. Then they know that they like you because you're helping them make money.
Who are you calling on for your call points? If you were just starting, let's say you just got here at San Diego, you've never been here, you're opening up, you're going into the resources we mentioned on the previous podcast, you're going into WebMD and ZocDoc and looking for doctors, but what specialty are you starting with?
Definitely family medicine and internal medicine, mainly because they are going to be able to take on a lot more variety of programs than if you go in with a specialist approach. So definitely there. One of the other things is don't always go straight to the city centre where there might be 20 doctors within a 5-mile radius or less. Sometimes the more remote call points are the ones that don't see reps out there as often, and they're often more likely to give you the time of day. So when I first started out, it was actually recommended to me to go out to those smaller country towns, and often you can get in front of somebody in those situations. So that's one of the places I would start, and then making connections with some of those multi-doctor providers. So not just the 1 and 2 doctor practices, though that's where I'd start, but start to look for those opportunities. And the other thing I like to do was actually talk to other sales reps and say, hey, I'm new in the area. Who do you know that likes to make money?
You're talking sales reps selling different things, like
Absolutely.
maybe a pharmaceutical rep or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So your pharma reps, they are, like, you're not in direct competition with them when you're talking to pharma reps. So definitely they know which doctors are open to looking at ancillary services, and they will tell you, because at the end of the day, as people, we all like to help each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And to speak to your point about the electronic health assessment, I know of a couple of reps that are making good money now, and they didn't make huge money off that electronic health assessment, but they did get a couple sales in. And that's sometimes just getting a win under your belt, even if it's a single. You don't have to always hit home runs. You just get that, and then that kind of motion creates emotion. And before you know it, they got some bigger accounts, and those led to some lab accounts. What about budgeting your time? In terms of how much time are you spending prospecting? How much time are you spending looking for some of the bigger opportunities? Because we've talked about things like IPAs and some of these other physician organizations. If you were just starting out, what percentage of your time would you be spending looking for new clients, calling on existing clients, and maybe focusing on some of these large opportunities?
I think looking for new clients, you want to be spending probably 20 to 25% of your time just researching your prospects. So, at least one day a week, you want to be spending time looking at where you want to go. As far as revisiting old prospects, I would say find enough doctors that you can call on. So depending on how far they are apart, you might get to 10 to 20 in a day. and you probably want to have a call cycle no longer than 2 or 3 weeks at the most, and pick out of those doctors. Some of those you may want to see weekly, because it can take 5 to 12 calls to get a sale, so you don't want to spread out your call cycle way too long.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen people that over prospect too, and all they do is they're into the hunting, and they don't spend enough time on doing the follow-ups and those things. So I think when you start out, it's really good to have a balance. If you can budget your time, the great thing about this industry, like I said, is you're your own boss. But then again, you're not accountable to anybody, so it's up to you how you're going to spend your time, and budgeting your time is very important. So I would myself spend at least maybe a couple hours a week doing some of the long-term projects. That's getting in with the IPAs and looking for the referrals to some of the bigger groups. And obviously budget some of your time during the week. That I always had set days, because there are certain days, like Monday is not a good day to do new sales calls. It's hard enough to get into a practice on a Monday, but especially if it's a brand new office, I tended to not do any of the new hunting prospecting on Mondays. Reserve certain days, like Wednesdays and Thursdays are great for that. Friday they're usually coasting into the weekend. But I budget out certain days that I was prospecting, certain days that I was doing follow-ups. And from what I've seen of reps who are successful, you really have to do it that way, because what some people do is they'll go out there and they'll prospect for 3 weeks, and they drum up a bunch of leads, and then they don't do any prospecting beyond that. And they go, well, I'm babysitting these leads. I need to make sure these leads go through. And as you know, not every lead is going to take off. And then they get discouraged when these leads fall apart and they don't have anything else that they're working on the back burner. If you're constantly shoveling coal into the fire, this is a game of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Let's face it. It's not a perfect industry. Doctors don't always say yes, and not everything works out according to plan. But if you keep shoveling coal into that fire, and you just dedicate yourself to, every week I'm going to call on at least 20 new practices, and you have those certain days, the people who do that have success, and they don't get discouraged, because you always have things working.
Yes, absolutely, Mike. Looking for those bigger relationships, and sometimes that can take even things like networking. So one thing I like to say is structure is freedom. So while working in this capacity is very autonomous, if you don't create some structure for yourself as to how you operate, then you can very quickly lose track of where you're going and maybe what you're meant to be doing. But then getting back to what I was saying before is put some time aside each week. Look for Chamber of Commerce events where you can go and network, because some of those people that are involved in some of the IPAs, that's where some of their business managers may be, and you don't know who you talk to there. You can also connect with accountants and lawyers, particularly accountants that specialise in doing books for medical practices. If you get out there and network, then let people know what you do. And when you talk to accountants about you help doctors make money, then they're much more likely to hand you some business over, because any accountant likes to see their small business owners do well.
Right, and also the things like the PQRS and meaningful use, and just buzzwords like improving practice efficiency, those reducing risk. Those are the things that really pique their interest, is what I found. Well, Viv, we are already, as I can see here, we're already up to 12 and a half minutes. So this was fun getting to do a live podcast. I hope it's not the last one. So thank you for joining me here.
Thanks, Mike, and it's great being here. Thank you.